This presentation outlines the mechanism of sodium bicarbonate as a nutritional aid, which is any substance that has the perceived capacity to manipulate and often improve work capacity, recovery, physiological function, and/or athletic performance. It has gained attention with its ability to buffer lactate presence in the blood and to restore homeostasis by pH regulation and the restoration of metabolic functions. Initially used and now banned in horse racing, the effects have been translated to human subjects, with its performing-enhancing effects potentially attributed to greater ATP concentration that enables an increased capacity to perform short and high-intensity bouts of exercise. Bicarbonate and carbon dioxide work in chemical equilibrium as the body's buffering system to avoid metabolic acidosis or alkalosis. Bicarbonate accounts for 65% of all the body's buffering capacity and enables the pH to stay within its homeostatic parameters of 7.35 to 7.45. The relationship between carbon dioxide and bicarbonate is as follows on the PowerPoint slide. In this reaction, bicarbonate binds with hydrogen to form carbonic acid to disable hydrogen ions from behaving as an acid. Carbonic acid undergoes a decomposition reaction to form water and carbon dioxide, its byproducts. And by ingesting sodium bicarbonate, the body now has an increased extracellular bicarbonate concentration to create a steep pH gradient between the extra and intracellular concentrations to move hydrogen ions outwards in a process known as efflux. This promotes and improves glycolic flux due to increased ATP generated in glycolysis and further promotes muscular acid-base homeostasis. The glycolytic pathway, as pictured on the left, commences with glucose undergoing glycolysis to produce ATP and increase hydrogen ions before creating pyruvate. This then undergoes lactate dehydrogenase, where pyruvate and additional hydrogen ions generate lactate, which becomes our marker for metabolic acidosis. Before glucose becomes pyruvate, the enzyme phosphofructokinase, an allosteric regulator, is produced, which binds to ATP and hydrogen as negative effectors to inhibit PFK's role in glycolysis and any catalytic activity. So the current literature base spans across a myriad of perspectives as to whether sodium bicarbonate has a performance increase or not. So in the first table we can see that across a myriad of different sports that sodium bicarbonate has the capacity to have between a 1.7 and a 3% increase or statistically significant results. However, there is also evidence to show that it does not have a performance increase, not statistically significant or any performance increment whatsoever. So we designed our experiment surrounding our hypothesis, which was the ingestion of 300 milligrams per kilo of body weight of sodium bicarbonate will result in a longer time to exhaustion in repeated maximal sprint efforts. So our experiment that was designed to answer our research hypothesis involved a test that was 5 by 45 seconds at 100% of our participants' VO2 max, with 45 seconds off at 0% of their VO2 max, with that final rep being to volitional fatigue. Now, to make sure that everything was the same between both testing days, our participant had breakfast at 7:45 a.m. and consumed a tomato, spinach and cheese croissant. The intake of sodium bicarbonate was in 20-minute intervals, commencing at 8:55. At 10:30 we set up our equipment, including the bike, the heart rate monitor, ensuring we had all the relevant measures and equipment such for the lactate and the RPE scale, and we took our resting values at 10:45, which was 15 minutes before we commenced our test. Our experiment was designed of Costel's 1984 experiment, whereby the athletes undertook 5 by 1 minute cycling bouts at 100% of their VO2 max after ingesting 0.2 grams per kilogram of body weight of sodium bicarbonate. In our results, we can see there was a 15% performance enhancement present, with the time to exhaustion increasing from 117 to 138 seconds. In Costel's 1984 experiment, a 42% increment was present. However, given our participant voluntarily terminated the test prior to exhaustion in the perceived bicarbonate experiment, it can be assumed that the potential for greater percentage of improvement could be produced. However, we can only speculate given the voluntary termination. Often occurring at the presence of fatigue without sodium bicarbonate, the presence of acidosis in the muscles causes a performance decrement, especially in sprint or high-intensity exercises for short durations. Thus, supplementation of sodium bicarbonate assists in attaining the equilibrium in the pH and helps to avoid said decrement. Wang et al. 2019 highlighted that acidosis hinders ATP resynthesis and slows glycolysis. However, the presence of sodium in sodium bicarbonate increases the plasma volume, which can contribute to a greater buffer potential due to its dilution of the hydrogen ion concentration. Hence, as the more sprints that were undertaken by our participant, the blood lactate levels increased in addition to the rate of perceived exertion, which was accompanied by a quicker onset of metabolic acidosis. With the trials without bicarbonate, such as the pink and the blue lines, we can see the blood lactate and RPE was greater than their supplemented counterpart. In comparison to the literature-based placebo, lactate concentration was comparable. However, the bicarbonate lactate concentration was not. This can be attributed to the voluntary cessation of the test, which has also affected the time to exhaustion because the participant was not at their threshold exhaustion at the completion of the test. This was evident by their RPE only being at 17 when she completed the protocol with the intervention compared to 20 with the placebo. Additionally, the participant was not at 40 RPM, which was our other indicator for finishing the test in our written methodology. Now, compared to literature such as Carr et al. 2012, we can compare the blood lactate levels of both intermittent/sprint intensity exercise. Sodium bicarbonate in the Carr graph is characterized by the dark circle. It is similar to both the placebo and the intervention blood lactate levels. However, it is evident that blood lactate levels for the intervention are significantly lower, however, can be extrapolated to be greater given the test was voluntarily terminated. Borg's 6 to 20 RPE scale shown on the slide was shown to our participant at every interval to ensure that we recorded an accurate RPE. As a recommendation from the current literature base that suggests that visually seeing the chart is a more valid and reliable mechanism to take this variable. In a myriad of literature sources such as Krosnup, Higgins, and Galdes and Maliko, in the intervention protocol, the RPE was significantly lower than the placebo. However, as again, our participant voluntarily ended the test, RPE was not achieved to 20, therefore she may have not really reached her maximum exhaustion. In summary, sodium bicarbonate provides a myriad of performance-enhancing benefits by slowing the progression of metabolic acidosis, by buffering the buildup of lactate in the blood, and consequently maintaining their pH within its homeostatic parameters. There are a few key practical factors to consider before including supplementation of sodium bicarb. Firstly, in many of the above research, such as Carr 2012 and McNaughton 2016, many of the participants reported gastrointestinal distress during or after the performance test in the form of nausea, stomach pain, diarrhea, or vomiting. To balance the benefits of sodium bicarbonate and minimize the GI distress, the range of 0.2 to 0.4 grams per kilogram of body weight was deemed both tolerable in the gut and enough to ascertain the performance benefits, with many studies recommending the mid-range of 0.3 grams per kilogram of body weight. Additionally, if an athlete is training below their lactate threshold, sodium bicarbonate provides a minimal to no benefit considering the body's already adept buffering capacity is enabling the lactate removal through hydrogen ions. For example, long-distance runners, swimmers, or cyclists will not see performance improvements given their performances at low intensities and high durations, whereas sodium bicarbonate is most effective in short-duration, high-intensity bouts no longer than 2 minutes, where lactate buildup is severe and requires additional assistance to remove the lactate. So in conclusion, providing that these practical applications can be addressed, the inclusion of sodium bicarbonate as a substance in short-duration and high-intensity exercising is beneficial given its capacity to attain pH equilibrium for longer and help avoid the performance decrement associated with metabolic acidosis.